Let's get right to our panel. Politico's Joe Williams joins us live now from Washington, D.C. And joining us here in New York, Edward Wyckoff Williams. He's a political analyst, also a columnist who contributes to The Root, TheGrio.com, Huffington Post as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending your holiday Friday with us. Edward, I'm going to start with you because you've got an article right now in The Root. It's on the website. It talks about the attempt to resurrect Reverend Wright. And not just about the attempt to resurrect Reverend Wright in that conversation, but what that is a larger part of. And here's a quote from your article, and it's a quote from the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, Emanuel Cleaver. And here it is. Emanuel Cleaver says in your article, "The issue of race has already raised its unprincipled head. I guess this year Republicans are going to blame President Obama for being black. They are Paleolithic politicians who know that race baiting still works." When he says that race baiting still works, do you believe that? Do you believe that race baiting is something that is still very effective in American politics?
Yes, I do. And a part of what is happening post what we experienced in 2008, with all the hope and the change, with all the promise of President Obama's election, essentially what we have now is a backlash, which I, in my writing, often refer to as white redemption 2.0, which I know is a little aggressive, but it essentially describes what occurred in American politics, not just in American society, but American politics in particular, between 1866 and 1877. Essentially, you had this backlash that saw the rise of the Ku Klux Klan against African Americans voting and then voting in their own electoral officials. And essentially what we now have is this backlash against this African American president. It's insidious the way that the Republican Party has gone about trying to turn specifically white, poor whites, and the white middle class against this president to delegitimize him, to make him seem outside the mainstream. They say he wasn't born here. They say that he we're not sure about his birth certificate. Right. He might be a secret Muslim. All of that is race-laced, I would say.
You think
and
those
it's
are
a
all
part of the same sort of political strategy.
You think that's classic whistleblowing?
It's dog whistles, and it's so obvious, but yet so effective. And that's why I think it's important for us to call them out on what they're doing.
Joe, you buy that?
Well, I think that it is true. I think that race and fear are the two most effective salespeople for politicians. And after all, I think about Jesse Helms' ad with the white hands crumpling up the paper saying, "You wanted that job, but they gave it to a minority." And you think all the way back to Willie Horton and some other things that have taken place, Ronald Reagan holding his kickoff campaign event in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Those are all very understated signals. But what you have with the Reverend Wright controversy, attempting to resurrect that, it's not just a dog whistle, it's a klaxon, it's an air raid siren, it's a call to arms. And the problem I see with that is that it would definitely turn off moderates and people who don't really want to know that they're voting for a racist. I mean, they respond to these code words, but they don't really want to go out and know that somebody's actually using this as a wedge issue. That tends to backfire.
But, Joe, Mitt Romney, he did issue a mild rebuke to the group that attempted to revive Reverend Wright, but he has been more selective when it comes to other supporters who endorse this line of attack. Donald Trump, for example, we were talking about him a few minutes ago at Dinner with Donald, actually the prize in a Romney campaign contest. How come Mitt Romney hasn't rebuked Donald Trump yet? Why is he going to stand with him on Tuesday and use the Donald to raise money?
Because of the last two words of your sentence, use Donald to raise money. For some reason, there's this appeal that I really don't understand with Donald Trump and the general populace. The guy really knows very little about politics. He knows something about making money, but even then, there's a lot of questions about whether or not his wealth is legitimate and as large as he says it is. Yet and still, he's been a kingmaker for a long time. He's going to be a kingmaker for at least one more cycle, and it doesn't really makes sense for Mitt Romney to rebuke him or all the other surrogates who are using or trying to rumble about using race as an issue, because Romney himself has used it occasionally at some points.
You mentioned earlier, you were talking, Edward, you dog whistle was what we were talking about before we started this segment. Apologizer, we've heard the president referred to as that. Folks like Donald Trump still question whether he was actually born here. And some of the other things, some of the other criticisms that are levied against the president. Is it your contention that a lot of those criticisms aren't merit-based at all? That it all goes back to, we don't like you because of the way you look?
Yes, I do, because if we look at this president's record and his background, he is the American dream personified. This is a man whose mother was a single mom for, from the earliest part of his life, who was on welfare. He took that and went to an Ivy League school undergrad at Columbia, went on to Harvard, met a wonderful woman that he married. He's created a family. He's built a career both as a constitutional professor and then as a community organizer and then the Senate. And this man has become the American dream. And so to attack him as if he does not belong here, as if he's ascended beyond his station, is essentially the dog whistle tactic that they're using.
But go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I think that that's true to a degree, but also it's, President Obama is nothing if not a moderate, and if nothing, someone who's trying to unite the party. And for the reason of that, it seems very strange that these attacks would be coming out of whole cloth with nothing to back them up. I mean, birtherism, we've had the long certificate released, we've had countless officials saying, yes, he really was born here, but it's the rumor that refuses to die, even with a guy Romney is going to raise funds with in a couple of days from now.
And can I add something to what Joe just said?
Last word.
It's also that this tactic of trying to turn all his strengths into weaknesses. So they say that he's not strong on foreign policy, but yet this man has one of the strongest foreign policy records that we've ever seen. They say he hasn't created jobs, but yet we have 5 million jobs added in the last few years. It's this constant attack on facts, essentially. The Republican Party has become sort of like a case study, as I said in my article, of cognitive dissonance. Nothing that they say can be backed up with facts, like Joe said, but yet they continue to use this almost in an Orwellian sense to try to change people's minds on what's actually just true.
We are going to have to leave it there. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Joe. Did you have something, Joe? 10 seconds? Did you have something you want?
I think that's pretty much it. We'll have to wait and see whether or not it has a real effect or if it blows back.
Joe Williams, Edward Wyckoff Williams, thanks so much. I always enjoy your writings on the internet, so it's good I could get you here for a conversation. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
You too.
You too. Take care.